5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
My name's Simon Bateson and I'm an early years officer here at Cowgate Under 5's nursery in Edinburgh. We're right on the Royal Mile and this is a council funded nursery for children from birth to 5. Our practice is underpinned by the work of Friedrich Froebel, who founded the original kindergarten in Prussia in the 19th century. And Froebel was passionately concerned that children and children's rights not be lost to the economic pressures that were sweeping through Europe at the time. At Cowgate, people often wonder where children have so much freedom, whether it's going to be perhaps a slightly chaotic environment, but what we are routinely told when people visit is how harmonious an environment it seems. And I think that's because children really benefit from that opportunity to regulate themselves, to decide for themselves what they're going to do. Our job as practitioners is really to stand back, gently notice, and then we can subtly and sensitively, carefully support children where we need to with a dialogic approach, which is really about asking children open questions that encourage their own self-reflection.
Children's rights affect the way I work because I'm kind of constantly thinking about it. I think because of being with other practitioners that practice the children's rights approach does make it easier. It's just really tuning into children and seeing them as kind of small humans that have a right to be listened to and respected, and that we're not going to impose what's easier for us onto them. So, it's nappy changing time. We're not going to force children to get their nappies changed. We're not going to force children to have lunch when it's lunchtime. It's very much, how you would speak to an adult. It's like, oh, you're not hungry just now. Oh, maybe we could put it aside for later. Really being respectful and listening to them. And, sometimes that is difficult. Yeah, you're like, oh, I've got to get this next job done. But what's the point of that? What we're trying to do is support children's autonomy and independence. And if we've constantly got our own agenda, then that's just going to fall by the wayside.
Sometimes we explicitly will talk to children about their rights, for example with physical space, if a child is pushing another child or snatching something from another child.
Would you like to look? You need to use words to ask.
We'll gently ask them to pause and ask them to notice the effect that that choice might be having.
Where could you get one? Where could Rocco get us now? Where did you get yours?
Outside.
Rocco, your friends are saying you could get one outside.
But often our practice of encouraging each other and children to think about our rights is to suspend our judgment and to take a much more tentative approach, to ask questions both verbally and non-verbally, to pause, to create space and room in which we can enable children to notice what is going on.
Are you going to go look for a snail? You tell me if you find one.
You have a big camera.
I do.
Are you cameraing me now?
I mean, we're a Froebelian nursery, so the ethos is very much centred around Froebel's principles, which are recognising childhood as a period in its own right, and I think that to me is the most important thing. Our children are not pre-anything. They're at a part of their life that's hugely important, it's the foundation of everything. So our ethos has always been essentially putting the child first. What works for our children. And I would definitely say Cowgate has evolved over the years because we're constantly reflecting on what we do and why we do it. Things like having our children in separate age-segregated spaces. That's something that historically happened at Cowgate. And then, a colleague who was doing her BA and looking at children's geography started to question, why do we do that? What are the benefits of that? And so we kind of broke down those barriers. And now we have a much more natural, familial way of being with our children. You wouldn't have 10 two-year-olds in a domestic situation. It's just not really a very natural state. And our way supports siblings to be together. They're already separated from their parents all day. Why would you then have them in separate spaces where they don't see each other? If you're considering children's rights, what about their rights to make their connections and choose the spaces they want to be in and choose the people they want to be with?
That we don't see ourselves as above the children. They're very much part of how we operate. They help us, they help with the chores. We're not taking their coats off for them. We're not like jamming their shoes on. We take things slowly and we'll pause and maybe we'll help with a little bit of a zip down, but we don't kind of just sweep in and do things. So that does mean that you're working at a different pace and that you're following their rhythms and that you're not kind of rushing.
Good practice for me is not insisting that a child wear a coat because you believe they'll be cold, but trusting that they will know whether or not they're cold. Good practice for me is not applying your adult assumptions about a child's capabilities, but rather coming from a place of faith and trust in the child that they will give something a go. They'll decide how brave they feel, how far they're willing to take it. I suppose it's all really down to relationships, because when you're truly engaged and know your children, you consider everything you do through that lens, if you like. You know, you're not just delivering a curriculum, you're involved, you're participating if they invite you. You know, you're just being alongside them.